Hello, I'm Roshana Coley.
Hi, my name is Inara Shiraz.
And welcome to Chai Time with Roshana and Inara.
And it's not a tea set, it's a chai set.
And Catherine Barclay, set during World War I.
The writer, Ernest Hemingway, provides extremely detailed insight into the psychological impact upon men and women who witnessed the Great War firsthand.
It's a hopeless romantic story, and it's also a tragedy, so we introduce A Farewell to Arms.
Before we dive into this heart-wrenching story, let's start off with the basics.
The main character, Frederick Henry, is an American ambulance driver working for the Italian front.
Catherine is an English nurse with a somewhat troubled past that hasn't spared her sanity, as you see her developing throughout this book. The majority of the story takes place in the Italian war front, then moves to Milan, and eventually the story is taken to Montreux, Switzerland. As the story takes Henry from place to place, Hemingway does almost an explicit job of describing the scenery.
It isn't, however, always the most appealing aspect of the book, and it's often a parallel between the emotions that the war evokes from Henry, Catherine, and all the others involved.
In the 5 books that comprise the entirety of Farewell to Arms, the 2nd, 4th, and 5th books are almost exclusively devoted to the development of Henry and Catherine's love story.
It all starts off in the first book, though, when Henry and Catherine meet through Rinaldi, a mutual friend who's a surgeon, and she caught Henry's eye right away.
After getting severely injured, Henry is transferred to a hospital in Milan with better facilities. Soon, Catherine joins him there.
Between shifts, Catherine and Henry spend time together, and over the course of a few months, both fall deeply in love with each other. They even think of themselves as a married couple, and the proof of their love comes in the form of their new child.
Can you believe it? Catherine is 3 months pregnant!
It's quite unbelievable.
I know, right?
They're not even married. It's scandalous.
That's the best part.
But what's unique is the lack of emotion that Henry displays. He has absolutely no emotion when Catherine tells him.
I mean, like, in regards to joy, happiness, fatherly love, there's nothing, absolutely nothing. Zilch, zero.
He doesn't even freak out like a normal teenager. For a married and spirit couple who are full out committed to each other, having a child was clearly not a very overwhelming and happy occasion.
Yeah. It was more like a burden, but not really, because he said it was okay. It's just so contradictory.
It was a very weird reaction. That's how we felt.
Yeah. Our parents are happy to have us, though. That's not a problem with us.
Inara is about to agree with the ending to Farewell to Arms. We do not get any liability for angered persons respond to the release of the ending, as it was meant for the academic purpose of this assignment. Only Chai Time with Roshana and Inara do not have any responsibility to compensate monetarily or in any other form. With questions, contact theawesomestpeopleever.com. Don't actually, the website is fake. Terms and conditions apply.
In other words, spoiler alert! Fast forwarding to the action after Henry is treated in Milan for his injured legs, he returns to the war front right as the Italian retreat begins. Henry leaves with his men. After they lose their trucks, they go back to the front to encounter an unexpected scenario.
Okay. Coming to a bridge, the Italian army was interrogating every man in an effort to flush out spies.
With fear and power hazing the rational army officers, every man they interrogated was killed in quick succession.
To escape this, Henry bolted into the river and made his way on foot back to Catherine. He managed to hop a train after a while with a bunch of guns, and soon he reached Milan.
There, he found out Catherine had gone to Stresa, so he set out after her and found her in a hotel where she was staying with a friend.
In order to avoid Henry's arrest, they escaped to Switzerland across a lake. There, they lived happily in a little wooden lodge until one day they decided to move closer to the hospital because of Catherine's impending due date.
Finally, the day came. The labor was protracted and long, and soon they had to do a C-section. Finally, Henry had a son, but when he saw him, he didn't really feel anything fatherly about it. No pride, no nothing. It turned out that the boy was stillborn, and later that day, Catherine died of a hemorrhage.
Perhaps Henry was in shock, because we never really witnessed an emotional reaction from him. He just kind of walked back to his hotel in the rain. Perhaps the war had numbed him to the tragedies of life.
And that's where Hemingway's work becomes really important. He shows the effect of war on the souls of ordinary people involved throughout his literature.
His work revolutionized how war was viewed and also how the writers wrote. He explained the writer's standard of fidelity to the truth should be so high that his invention, out of his experience, should produce a truer account than anything factual can be. For facts can be observed badly, but when a good writer is creating something, he has time and scope to make of it an absolute truth.
Many of the events in Farewell to Arms actually parallel Hemingway's own personal experiences with World War I. He, like Frederick Henry, volunteered as an ambulance driver with the American Red Cross in Italy.
2 weeks before he turned 19, Hemingway was injured by Austrian mortar fire while handing out cigarettes and chocolate. Though he was wounded, he carried an Italian soldier to safety, earning him the Silver Medal of Valor from the Italian government.
While he was recovering for 6 months in Milan, he fell in love with Agnes von Kurowski, an American Red Cross nurse.
Hemingway pulled from his own experiences in his work to provide a very accurate portrayal of the war. The style moved away from the romanticization that used to be so popular, as he was committed to communicating the truth as best as he could.
Later on in his writings, he commented on the war. War as a boy, you have a great illusion of immortality. Other people get killed, not you. Then when you are badly wounded the first time, you lose that illusion and you know it can happen to you. After being severely wounded 2 weeks before my 19th birthday, I had a bad time until I figured out that nothing could happen to me that had not happened to all men before me. Whatever I had to do, men had always done. If they had done it, then I could do it too, and the best thing was not to worry about it.
The most important thing Hemingway gave us with Farewell to Arms was real insight into the actual effects of the war, and all their horror and hopelessness. Alright, so completely honestly, the first time we read Farewell to Arms and we discussed it with each other, the number one comment we had was, I learned a lot about liquor in that book.
Right, it gives you a really detailed account, and it's not the most appealing part of it, actually. It's really droned out, really boring sometimes, and you kind of just don't know what's happening. You're just lost in the text.
But that's until you know the background behind the text. Like, once you know the inspiration for the story, it becomes riveting.
Because this story is not just a story of Frederick Henry and Catherine Barclay, but it's a story of Ernest Hemingway himself. And it kind of emulates what everyday people had to go through and the massive transformation of people's mentality throughout World War I.
And that's something we can't experience firsthand except through a book like Farewell to Arms.
So if and when you read Farewell to Arms, move past the text, take into account Hemingway's experiences with the topic matter, and how he used that to create the world you're reading about.
Think about how it must have felt to experience the things Frederick Henry did, that Hemingway did, and the effect it would have on your outlook on life.
And especially reflect on how World War I changed our entire perspective, and how you can see that in this book.
When you do that, this book is impossible to put down.
And with that, it's time to say goodbye and sip our chai.
Until next time.
Peace out.